Joe, I'm so excited to have you on the show, man. And I'd like to start this off knowing a little bit about your background. And I just want to know, how did you first become interested in a legal career?
Sure. So, first and foremost, thanks for having me on, Chris. Listen to the podcast all the time and big fan. So, I guess a little bit about my background. I grew up. My dad is an attorney. He's been practicing, I guess, since before I was born. He's been doing asbestos litigation that entire time, and so it's kind of funny because people would always say, "You want to be like your dad? You want to be like your dad?" And when I was younger, I always say no, right? And then the older I got, after I kind of had worked in restaurant industry a long time, interesting fact, I have a culinary degree, and when that
Nice.
lifestyle didn't really kind of jive with kind of the direction I was moving, both mentally and professionally, that I decided I wanted showers to be optional after work. And then I also, my father provided a great, living and upbringing for us, and so I wanted to live how I grew up, and I didn't know any really tremendously successful people, and all those people that I did know were all attorneys and they got to help other people. And so that's kind of what led me to becoming an attorney and following in my dad's footsteps.
It's interesting. A lot of individuals that I talk to that have good EQ and good communication skills have worked in the restaurant industry. I think it's because we have to deal with, and I too, I don't think anybody knows this is my background. I was a server and a bartender for like 3 years. So I worked full time through
Yeah,
college, and it taught me how to talk to people, how to deal with issues. And it's just interesting. I think anyone that's dealt with that has had some issue that they've had to overcome, and it's hard work too.
it's definitely hard work. I mean, I worked in the front of the house, back of the house. The one job I never was a bartender. Probably, I'm still here and alive because of that, right? That would have been probably the worst job to have. But it definitely does give you, those people skills, those salesman skills that a lot of, personal injury attorneys need to have, or from the marketing aspect of, kind of getting cases, right? You need to be able to sell, and not in like a
Right.
malicious way, but, you're your own
Yeah.
biggest fan, and that's kind of the name of the game. There's a whole industry around marketing, whether it's the legal field or any other type of business.
I think it's not. I think the word sell, it has like that negative connotation, but like we do it every day, whether we're trying to convince our employees or our clients or your spouse, and it's not like in a negative way. It's like something that you want to do or where you want to eat or just how you're going to deal with your time. So I think that I think that there's a lot to be learned there.
Of
And
course.
so you practice business law and personal injury law, and so how come you didn't shift and go to MISO and asbestos? Why business law, and then of course personal injury is mesothelioma is a subset of personal injury, but how did you focus in on those areas?
Sure. So, I mean, I initially, when I first graduated law school back in 2015, and then all through law school, I was law clerking, and I did work in asbestos. I worked at my father's firm. It wasn't his firm, but the law offices of Peter Angelos, which was the largest at the time asbestos firm in Baltimore, and for the state of Maryland rather. And so that's where I'm originally from, is Baltimore. And then, as with anything, asbestos is kind of on a bell curve, right? And it's on the bottom of that bell curve because it's a dose response disease. And asbestos was, forbidden to be in the marketplace, back around like the 80s. It kind of gotten taken out of a lot of products. And so because it's not in products, people aren't getting sick. If people aren't getting sick, there's not really, room for an asbestos industry, right? Or it's kind of on the bottom part of the arc. And so, I decided with my wife to kind of move to the Carolinas and just pivot into, I guess, the more typical personal injury realm, which is your, slip and falls, dog bites, auto accidents, truck accidents. And then because the firm that I currently am at, we do a little bit of everything here. I do kind of the business litigation for one of the partners as well.
Yeah, that's incredible. And being fully transparent, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is you do a phenomenal job at networking and for referrals and putting yourself out there and creating original content and being really authentic. And I know we're going to talk a lot about that, but the question, and maybe it's not binary, but do you consider yourself an extrovert? Is it natural for you to go and meet people and make these connections, or is there a little bit of stress and you got to decompress? How does that work? Because I think a lot of people have challenges there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because I think people that Nomi would say I'm extroverted, and I am extroverted, but at the same time, I think all extroverts, they still have that, you need your own time and you need to pull back. And so, and with anything that's new, it is kind of challenging to really put yourself out there and make original content and things. But I find it easy to make friends. I always have. And it's just, I don't know if it's a skill or if it's something that you're just born with and it's just who I am. Like I enjoy going to parties, whereas some people that's like a drag, and they, kind of drag themselves to the party, right? Because it's just they're going with their spouse or their friends or they're trying to be social. That kind of stuff, it amps me up. It makes me feel more alive. So I enjoy the networking aspect with other attorneys, and people in general. And so it kind of came natural, but the being on video, that part did not come natural. I'm not gonna, sit here and lie about that. That's kind of really tough.
Yeah, I think the what's interesting, and I know if Maria Monroy's listening from Law Rank, she's listening. She always tries to get me to go to events, and I'm like, I have went to events and I struggle. Like it's easier now that I'm a host of a podcast and I have more people that have had these one-on-one conversations. So like
Sure.
if I now having us talking on the podcast, if I saw you in an event, it'd be very easy for me to speak to you. But before
Yeah.
that, it was really challenging. I'd get nervous. I would, kind of go into this little hole. And I think that for anyone listening, first of all, if you're considering a podcast, that's like one of the big benefits is, first of all, I love having these intellectual conversations where I get to learn about people and their skills, and it provides an outlet. And I think for me, that's where it's helped. One of the things, and you talked about video, so we got to jump right to Instagram because you said, first of all, it was a little bit of challenging to do the video, but then you dress up as Flo from, what is she, Progressive,
Yeah.
and do an Instagram video. So what was kind of the shift there? Did you just get more comfortable over time? How did your transition go into video?
Yeah. So I guess to take just like a step back on the conference thing, right? It is easier when you know some people, right? Going to a room of, 100 people and not knowing a single person and having to start a conversation. I mean, I consider myself extroverted, but I still feel like that aspect is difficult. Now, I'm in the process of quitting smoking, but I used to always find it was easy to meet people that did smoke because nowadays we're pariahs and we're outside off in the fray. So that kind of gave you, something to link you together that makes you similar, right? And so you can kind of chat and then you meet one person, right? And I didn't really start going to these conferences until I got on Instagram, to kind of segue back to IG. And so I had kind of met these people in this two-dimensional space. And so it was a little bit easier from DMing with these people, already feeling like I knew them, right? And meeting them at, a conference or something like that. Um, but to kind of move into your original question of how I decided to dress up as Flo, or I do a Jake from State Farm, and I think I've done a couple of videos with a Gecko T-shirt making fun of Geico. Um, I consider myself. I don't like to. I consider what I do very serious, right? A client being injured or something like that, or a client being taken advantage of with a business contract not being paid fairly or compensated fairly. I take that very seriously because these people, they put their trust and faith in you to wade through, the legal system. And it just, I take that aspect very seriously. But when it comes to myself, and if you know me outside of the law, you know, I don't try to take myself too seriously. I always say I can't stand attorneys that think they're better than people because they're a lawyer, right? That's just what you do. It's not who you are, right? And so I like to have fun. And, I feel like dressing up, making fun of these insurance companies, being lighthearted about it, that's just kind of came to me. And I got the gear and the swag off Amazon. So it's just something extra to kind of make fun of myself and try to give people, some education along with it. And that's kind of how it all started. So it's been fun.
I think that's what So the interesting thing is, and how Instagram and all these social media networks work is, you have to get attention, you have to get engagement for your content to show up in your feed. And when you do this, you're getting a lot of attention and likes and laughs and comments. And then I
Yeah.
think that's how I even came across the video flow. And the other thing that I'd like to just point out is, I don't know. I'm not aware of any legal firm, and I would ask you this: are you aware of any law firm that has a huge follower base that doesn't have some form of entertainment that's just super factual?
Uh,
Does any come to mind?
Not well. I mean, I know there are some people they try to weave the entertainment aspect into the facts. I mean, you're trying to. The law is very complicated, right? And so you're trying to educate someone, make it fun, all at the same time within. Originally it was 30 seconds, and now I think Instagram's the reels they allow you to go to a minute and a half if you want, right? So that's a lot more time, relatively speaking, right? It's three times the amount of time, but it's very difficult to kind of just do a whole educate someone on every single aspect of any area or any topic in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I think also just from a consumption point of view, I think that individuals like to consume shorter clips
Yeah,
and just flip through the next if they're interested. So I think that aligns there too.
I mean, they
So
say
let's
you have like what 7 seconds or 3 seconds to catch their attention, and then within the first 7 seconds they decide if they're going to watch the entire video. And so I just had my first viral reel, if you want to call it that, and I found that the when you actually speak and have your own original content instead of doing trends, those ones have been doing better for me lately. Where I actually even step even more outside my comfort zone and do the talking instead of like with Flow or Jake from State Farm. I'm doing a voiceover of a trending audio and then applying it to the legal field, right? But with this one that just went viral like last week, and it's still like I had to turn notifications off on my phone because it was just nonstop going, and it's hit 500,000 views today, and it was me actually talking about a video, and so I've actually found that doing real original content has been performing better for me. Now I don't have 500,000 views on every video, but these other ones are getting over 10,000 where I'm actually speaking and putting myself even more out there.
let's drill down even more on this because I think this is super interesting because this speaks to the type of content that you're creating that is effective. And first, what is the video that went viral? Let's break that down. Like, how long was it? Why do you think this one, out of all the other content, because you've done a ton of content, really took off?
So it starts out. I've been doing a lot of these videos that seem to be working. So it's a video of somebody else that I find, whether it's a car accident or a dirt bike or a four wheeler crashing into an individual, and then I talk about the legal repercussions of that from a personal injury standpoint. So this particular video, it was a pedestrian on a sidewalk throwing a rock at a moving car, and he missed, and then he picked up a rock and threw it again at a moving car. That car then made a U-turn, almost got into an accident with another car. Luckily missed that car, but then they drove on the sidewalk and ran over the pedestrian. And so the pedestrian went flying in the air, and so it has good optics, right? And you have a hook, it's like wait for it, and then he almost crashes into the car. So then I say keep waiting, it gets crazier. So like kind of drawing the audience in to be like, oh, well, what's going to happen next? And then he runs into this guy, but then it automatically switches to me, and I pose a question to myself of, is this legal, right? And then I think what got people going was I said, you can't defend property with violence. And then the next clip was, this guy, while he deserved to get run over, right, kind of jokingly around, not taking myself too seriously, because I love cars, and if you're throwing rocks at my car, that's going to make me very angry. So I say, that guy would still have a case against the driver of the car, right? And so it brought up a lot of issues because it's only 30 seconds, and I didn't get into people like the castle doctrine, right? People are like, you can protect your car in Texas, or, it's got over 500 comments, and people are like, you can protect your house. And my whole thing was this car, he made a U-turn to go and run over a pedestrian, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so what I found, it kind of pulled on people's like their semi knowledge of knowing that you can kind of stand your ground because you've had a lot of things like that in the media nowadays. And it kind of just took off, right? Because I guess I didn't really fully flesh out, the defending your property, and everyone attached to that, which is a criminal thing, right? What
Right.
I was just really trying to propose was, if you get hit by a car and you're a pedestrian, you can recover on your uninsured motorist coverage for your own car, is what I
Mm-hmm.
really was the message I was getting out. And I had no idea it was going to, strike a chord and kind of go viral. So, Yeah.
The funny thing is, and this speaks to the content and exactly what we talk. I know exactly what you're talking about. I watched that video. I was one of your 500,000 or however many views. Like I now can recall it like very vividly. And do you think that, and just a couple more on this one specifically, did you go in when people started giving their opinions and they're doing the status play, like to show how smart they are and
Yeah.
whatever? Did you re-engage and say, "Whoa, I didn't have time to cover this," and drive up conversation in the chat, or did you just kind of, are you just kind of watching it, eating popcorn, kind of seeing what people are saying?
So I to take a step back, I follow a lot of growth experts or Instagram influencers that they actually help you grow on Instagram, right? They're not lawyers. I really only use Instagram for like business and to meet and actually have real relationships, right? And so what I've learned from understanding about how Instagram works is you should engage with people that are engaging with you to be social, right? And I want to. And so in the very beginning, I was, right? And I wasn't like defending myself. I would say, you raised a good point, and then I would answer it with the follow up and then kind of point them to what the insurance stuff was about, right? But then as the video started taking off, there was just too much to where I couldn't actually do my actual work to keep engaging with the audience. And then I saw a lot of the audience engaging back and forth, and then I'd see some hateful comments. I would delete those because I just don't want that, associated with my page. And then a lot of people, which I started just rolling my eyes after a while, I can probably at least 10 or more notifications that I got of people saying, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And, I'm like, okay, so it's not like that original. And I would stop engaging with them unless it was something that was extremely funny or raised a really good legal point. I had to
Right.
stop just because it was just too much to actually live my life and engage with,
Mm-hmm.
600 plus comments.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, that makes sense, and it more engagement, people probably tagging themselves and having these back and forth
Yeah.
conversations just kept it really
I did
active.
film, so it did, being in the comments, it led me to, I filmed another video based off of that video where I went more into the castle doctrine to, one, let the audience know that, I guess selfishly, that I'm not stupid and I know that you can defend property, right? In certain circumstances. And so that video was about, the castle doctrine and defending property. And I kind of referenced my prior video and took a screenshot of it. That video, interestingly, guy has like 14,000 views, right? So not all 500,000 people saw that because there's not really a way to link it, So, but I did go back and they gave me an idea for more content because all these people were talking about, you can defend your car, you can defend your house. And I'm like, yeah, you can. And these are the instances when you can, and why in the prior video, why I said, in my opinion, the driver of the car is still in the wrong. So.
Right. Right, and so that ends up being a feedback loop, and then you don't have to discover these topics; they kind of create themselves, just being,
Mm-hmm.
engaging with your audience. So I love that. First of all, that's an amazing tip for anyone listening. The Instead of just thinking about the next, just kind of blindly creating topics and hoping one goes off, then you can go deeper on the topic.